What if the Titanic's tragic end wasn't just a tale of hubris and bad luck, but a puzzle of overlooked warnings and hidden flaws? For over a century, history has focused on the iceberg, but emerging forensic evidence reveals a far more intricate story. Could substandard rivets have doomed the ship before it even set sail? Did a smoldering coal fire secretly weaken its structure days before disaster struck? And why were the binoculars, crucial for spotting danger, locked away at the worst possible moment? The truth behind the Titanic's sinking is darker and more complex than we've ever been told. What if the Titanic was doomed before it ever touched water? The shipyard workers at Harland and Wolff faced immense pressure, building 3 massive ships at once while racing against tight deadlines. Rushing perfection always comes at a cost, and in this case, it was the rivets holding the ship together. Workers used 2 types of rivets, strong steel ones for accessible areas, and weaker iron ones for harder-to-reach spots like the bow and stern. Tests on recovered rivets revealed slag concentrations as high as 9%, making them brittle. One blacksmith later admitted they were told to just make it work when questioning the materials. The shipbuilders knew these rivets weren't ideal, but meeting deadlines took priority. Now imagine the moment of impact. The iceberg scrapes along the exact sections where those substandard rivets were used. The weaker metal couldn't withstand the pressure. Rivets failed, seams opened, and water surged into the hull. The steel rivets in the middle section held firm, temporarily halting the flooding where stronger materials were used. Even with perfect rivets, the design itself was flawed. The joints were only about 27% as strong as the steel plates they connected. Combine that with brittle iron rivets, and disaster was almost inevitable. The Olympic, Titanic's sister ship, used the same rivets and survived collisions, but that doesn't erase the inherent risk. When the iceberg struck, it wasn't a clean gash. The contact points aligned with the weak rivet zones, causing plates to buckle and rivets to shear, breaking the waterproof seals. The freezing water made the brittle metal even more fragile, and once the first rivets failed, the damage spread rapidly. Harland and Wolff defended their work, pointing to the Olympic's long service. But after the Titanic sank and the Britannic hit a mine, both surviving ships were retrofitted with double hulls and taller bulkheads. Even the builders recognized the need for change. This wasn't just an iceberg hitting a ship. It was an iceberg striking the weakest points of a rushed construction job. Those tiny rivets were meant to hold the unthinkable, and when they failed, they sealed the fate of 1,500 lives. How could a fire burn for days on the most famous ship in history and nobody talks about it? Coal bunker fires weren't rare on steamships. They happened about once every 20 voyages. But the one on Titanic was different. It started days before departure in bunker number 6, a massive storage area holding over 1,000 tons of coal. The crew knew. They fought it the whole trip. Yet somehow this fact got buried for nearly a century. Here's what we know from crew accounts. Stokers worked in grueling shifts, drenched in sweat, shoveling burning coal into furnaces to get rid of it. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the heat was suffocating. Temperatures in the bunker reached over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to warp steel, almost like baking it until it becomes brittle. And here's the critical detail. That bunker sat right against the hull where the iceberg later struck. A photograph taken in Southampton shows a 30-foot dark streak along the starboard side. Researchers like Sinan Malini argue this was a scorch mark from the fire. The position lines up perfectly with bunker 6. Modern analysis shows steel exposed to such intense heat loses about 75% of its strength. So when the iceberg scraped that exact spot, it wasn't hitting solid steel. It was hitting metal already weakened to the point of crumbling. The science is chilling. Normal ship steel could bend and deform on impact, but heat-damaged steel, it cracks. Tests reveal steel exposed to prolonged high heat becomes up to 4 times more likely to fracture. The iceberg didn't just open seams, it shattered them. And those weak rivets we talked about, the fire made them even more brittle. White Star Line knew about the fire. Documents show they considered delaying the voyage, but insurance wouldn't cover fire damage unless it happened at sea, so they sailed anyway. Passengers noticed smoke and burning smells, but were told it was normal. Meanwhile, below deck, men worked in hellish conditions, battling a fire they couldn't extinguish. Titanic might have survived the iceberg if not for that fire. The combination of heat and ice was catastrophic. That 30-foot scorch mark wasn't just a curiosity, it was a warning no one heeded. Why would experienced sailors ignore 7 separate ice warnings? In 1912, ships followed standard procedures for ice alerts. Messages went to the bridge, officers logged them, and captains adjusted course. But on Titanic, the system broke down. The Masaba's detailed warning about large icebergs, pack ice, and field ice directly in Titanic's path never reached Captain Smith. A simple typing error, MXG instead of MSG, meant the message stayed in the radio room. That mistake might have cost 1,500 lives. The radio operators were overwhelmed with passenger messages, prioritizing luxury over safety. When Californian radioed about stopping for ice, Titanic's operator snapped, "Keep out! Shut up! You're jamming my signal. I'm working Cape Race." This wasn't just rude, it was reckless. Californians sat surrounded by ice just miles away, yet Titanic pressed on at 21.5 knots. The ship's log shows 9 ice warnings that day, but officers saw only a few. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee faced another issue: no binoculars. The key to their locker had been misplaced in Southampton. Fleet later testified he could have spotted the iceberg minutes sooner with them. At Titanic's speed, those minutes could have been life-saving. Without binoculars, they strained their eyes in the dark, seeing the iceberg only when it was too late. Here's the math. With binoculars, the lookouts might have seen the iceberg at 2.5 miles instead of 1.5. At 21.5 knots, that's 90 extra seconds to react. The ship needed about 60 seconds to turn. Those missing binoculars meant the difference between a near miss and disaster. The crew knew this. After the sinking, White Star Line immediately required binoculars for all lookouts. Warnings kept coming that night. At 9:40 p.m., Coronia reported ice. At 10:30, Nordum sent coordinates. At 11 Haas, Californian tried again. Each message should have prompted slower speeds or course changes. Instead, Titanic maintained full speed into a known ice field. Captain Smith even left the bridge at 9:30, turning command over to First Officer Murdoch. The last warning came at 11:00 p.m., just 40 minutes before impact. These mistakes sealed Titanic's fate, turning a preventable accident into a tragedy. For 73 years, everyone thought they knew how Titanic sank. Survivors described it going down in one piece, sliding beneath the waves. Official inquiries backed this up. Then in 1985, Robert Ballard's team found the wreck, and nothing matched the stories. The ship lay in 2 massive pieces, torn apart like a snapped twig. That discovery rewrote the disaster's narrative. Survivor accounts were flawed because they saw the sinking from lifeboats in the dark and through sheer panic. Some swore the ship sank intact, while others claimed it broke in half. Investigators dismissed the latter, but the wreck proved them right. The breakup happened at the surface, not underwater, as experts assumed. This explained why survivors described hearing explosions. It was the sound of steel tearing under unimaginable stress. Modern computer simulations revealed the sequence of events. As the bow filled with water, the stern rose too high, concentrating stress near the 3rd funnel, where weak rivets and fire damage had already compromised the structure. The ship snapped just aft of the grand staircase. The bow sank first, pulling the stern vertical before it broke apart. The wreck site confirmed this. 2 main pieces lie 2,000 feet apart, with debris scattered between them. Steel samples told another damning story. Tests showed the hull plates became brittle in freezing water, losing their ability to bend. Instead of deforming when the iceberg hit, the steel cracked. The rivets, with slag concentrations up to 9%, shattered like glass. One metallurgist summed it up: good steel stretches, Titanic steel snapped. The cold water turned minor flaws into catastrophic failures. The wreck also disproved the myth of a 300-foot gash. The iceberg caused small punctures and popped rivets along the starboard side. Water rushed in through openings no wider than a human hand. 6 compartments flooded because the bulkheads didn't seal at the top, a fatal design flaw. The stern's violent flooding trapped hundreds, while air pockets exploded as it sank. The bow hit the seabed at nearly 30 mph, burying itself 60 feet into the mud. These final moments explained why so few survived from the stern. The Titanic's lesson isn't about steel or icebergs. It's about us. We rush deadlines, ignore warnings, and overtrust technology. That ice warning typo? It's like skipping a safety check because it's fine. After the sinking, ships got better radios, lifeboats, and the ice patrol. But human nature, still the same. Every unsinkable system, banks, bridges, or tech, fails from arrogance and small mistakes. So next time someone says, "It can't happen here," think of Titanic. Picture the binoculars left behind, the warnings dismissed. Then ask yourself, what small oversight could sink your ship? Slow down, reflect, and share this if it resonates. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share to show your support. Every click helps crack open the next vault. This is Tales from the Time Vault.